Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Savelis. In this video, I will be showing you how to make the ultimate Dexterity character in Elden Ring. I will demonstrate 5 different builds you can use, all of which have the exact same stats, so no respecing will be required. These builds are all very different from one another, which will allow you to switch up your playstyle on a single character without getting bored and having to respec or make a new character. Now I'm sure you've heard that Shadow of the Erdtree is out, and I'm having a blast playing through it and starting to try out the new weapons added in the DLC. That being said, this build and other builds in this series will not have DLC content in them, partially to avoid spoilers and also to provide a baseline set of builds you can use to beat the core game and enter DLC with plenty of options at your disposal. That being said, I will definitely be making DLC build videos in the future once I have a better understanding of the new items and how best to use them. For this Dexterity build, we will be starting out as the hero class, since it has the least number of wasted stats for our build. So what are the stat requirements for these builds? At level 150, we want to have 60 vigor for that big HP bar. 16 mind gives us 100 FP, which is enough to cast all buffs before a boss fight, and it allows us to use our weapon skills a reasonable number of times per FP per flask. 20 endurance gives us enough carry weight to get to 51 poise from our armor. 20 strength allows us to meet the weapon requirements, and a couple of these builds scale secondarily off of strength. Obviously, this is a dexterity build, so we're going to want 80 dex to hit the soft cap. Intelligence is useless to us, so we're leaving it at 7. We have 15 faith and 11 arcane for buffs. FYI, I did end up using a level 171 character in this footage, but I put all those extra points into intelligence, which again is completely useless to us, so for all intents and purposes, this character is level 150. I'm going to explain buffing first, since all of these builds have a similar buffing routine. To buff up, drink your flask, then use Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. Then apply Bloodflame Blade, if that build uses it. First up, we have an Unsheathe Nagakiba build. We put the Nagakiba in Keen Affinity, and we have a seal for buffs and try to get 51 poise. For talismans, we have the Shard of Alexander, Dragoncrest Great Shield, Millicent's Prosthesis, and the Lord of Blood's Exaltation. In the flask, we have the Opaline Hard tier and the Faith tier. On bosses, you want to hold L2, then press R2 for the overhead animation. Fully buffed, Unsheathed does around 1400 damage on Grail. Unbuffed, we are doing around 2000 damage to smaller enemies. I really like Unsheath on a Dex character, as it gives you access to really powerful stance breaking. The Nagakiba is a great weapon in general because of its long reach and innate bleed. If you want to lean more into that bleed aspect, you can also easily switch the Ash of War for Double Slash, for a bonus 6th build that applies bleed very quickly. Build number 2 is the super reliable Bloodhound's Fang build. We have the Bloodhound's Fang, any seal, and try to get 51 poise. For talismans, we have the Shard of Alexander, Dragoncrest's Great Shield, the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and Millicent's Prosthesis. In the flask, we have the Strength tier and the Faith tier, since this weapon scales with strength in addition to dex. To use this weapon, you want to press L2, then press R2 for the follow-up charging animation. Fully buffed, one combo does around 3000 damage on Grail. Unbuffed, we are doing around 3,500 damage to smaller enemies. The Bloodhound's Fang is a very reliable and safe weapon to use. The skill makes you jump back out of harm's way, and the follow-up dash has built-in invulnerability frames. I would definitely recommend this weapon for a first playthrough of the game. For build number 3, we are going to provide a ranged option with the Bolt of Gransax. We have the Bolt of Gransax and a seal for buffs. Try to get 51 poise. For talismans, we have the Lightning Scorpion Charm, the Shard of Alexander, the Dragoncrest Great Shield, and the Ritual Sword Talisman. If you want more damage, you can swap the Dragoncrest Great Shield for the Godfrey icon, which increases the damage of the skill when you fully charge it. In the flask, we have the Lightning tier and the Faith tier. For buffing, you only need to use the flask and Golden Vow, since this skill does all lightning damage. I couldn't get the Lightning Bolt to hit Grail, but you can see a fully charged bolt does around 3000 damage to this dragon. Unbuffed, we were doing around 2300 damage. Having a ranged option like this is great in many boss fights where you start far away from the enemy. Even in close quarters, you should have enough time to pull off using the skill with good spacing. Our second to last build is another ranged option, the Stormblade Ash of War. I put this on a dismounter in Keen Affinity, though pretty much any large sword is a good option. We have a seal for buffs and try to get 51 poise. For talismans, we have the Shard of Alexander, Dragoncrest Great Shield, Ritual Sword Talisman, and Millicent's Prosthesis. In the flask, we have the Strength tier and the Faith tier, since Stormblade also scales with Strength. You can use the Bloodflame Blade with this build, but I usually skip it since it only applies to the melee hits of the weapon. Again, I couldn't get the projectiles to hit Grail, but each one was dealing 1300 damage to this dragon. Stormblade is a very underrated Ash of War. The projectiles come out very fast and don't use a lot of FP, making it spammable. This works great in the overworld and during boss fights to take on any challenge from a safer range. The skill also has a hitbox up close, which is why I suggest using a greatsword, curved greatsword, or heavy thrusting sword, as the Stormblade's swing speed is the same regardless of the weapon choice. For our final build, we are going to be using dual spears. We have the Naginata and a spiked spear, both in Keen Affinity. In New Game Plus, you can swap the spiked spear out for a second Naginata. We have a seal for buffs and try to get 51 poise. For talismans, we have the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Millicent's Prosthesis, the Winged Sword Insignia, and I'm using the Erdtree's Favor +2 to have enough carry weight for 51 poise. But if you want more damage, definitely use the Spear Talisman instead. In the flask, we have the Thorny Cracked tier and the Faith tier. Fully buffed, our L1 paired attacks are doing around 1500 damage on Grail. We also can get a 13k bleed proc pretty quickly. Unbuffed, each poke does around 1000 damage. The damage numbers are a bit misleading because the attacks come out so fast, and you have way more openings to poke the enemy. You can see how quickly these poke attacks come out, and you also can use them coming out of a dodge roll too, which is nice. Also, the speed at which we apply bleed is great as well. That's it for this video. Hope you learned a thing or two. If it was helpful, please leave a like. If you found this build interesting, you might like my ultimate strength build video. Also, I will be making more videos like this for Intelligence and Fate, so if that sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing to the channel. If there are any other Elden Ring videos you would like to see, please let me know in the comments section below. Thanks everyone, peace.